What's up, everybody? This is Decentralens with your hosts, Me Blue and Disco. How you doing today, Disco?
Very well. I am Disco.
Oh wow, you're almost going like Devo robot move on us there.
I like the Devo.
Yeah. All right. I know you're always like, when is he doing the opening? He's always got to do the opening. So everybody here's the effing opening.
This is Decentral Lens, distilling the crypto news you need to know and why.
All right. Well, first order of business, Disco.
Ooh.
There was a documentary last night, apparently, and this Blutoshi was actually at a concert with his nieces, a very good concert with a band that you got me into all those years ago called Air. Sometimes you have to put French band in quotes because they are from France, not like Air or Air Supply, the crappy bands from America. But I gotta say, I've seen them live before. They're not the best live performers, and last night was a good show. So thank you for introducing them to me 25 years ago, possibly 26 years ago. And it was a good show. And my nieces loved it. They said one of them, who goes to concerts all the time, had a DJ show at a big college, said top 5, which I was very surprised about.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. There's something really special about, experiencing music live, especially with how much we're tied to, different devices and stuff, and to kind of just sit back. I had a great experience a week or so ago, and I was able to see 4 artists at a festival over the course of a couple of days. And, it really does just kind of give you a bit of a reset and a perspective, and I'm all for it. So I will echo the Austin, Texas sentiment of support live music and keep it weird, and just it's one of the greatest things out there. So that's my shill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely forgot in the opening, you had the best opening line ever, which was, everybody, I am Blue and this is Disco and we are all Peter Todd. So Disco, last night there was a documentary. I used Venice AI here, and I said, please write in "We are all Satoshi" and have a bunch of people in orange shirts by the National Monument. And it was so like, it gave me a bunch with Trump saying "We are all Satoshi" or "all Satoshi." We know letters in AI is always scribbledy-gook. We never know if it's going to work, but this one is even funnier. This feels almost like 15-letter rune coin or rune meme to me. Like, we are all Satosh. Like, it's so close to an I. Like, they literally, an exclamation point is the inverted I. But I don't know. I like this one. And, with our massive, multi-million following, like this meme, I don't want to set my own meme on fire, Disco, but this one could be off to the races. At least 11 people are going to post this all over the interwebs.
I'm over on Pump Fun spinning up a coin right now, so we'll see how it goes.
I already spun one up 4 minutes ago. What was it?
Yeah.
What was the number? Like 4,500 a day or being?
Yeah, it's remarkable, and we'll get into that. But really quick, just to go back, I did watch the documentary last night, and I will say that whoever was promoting it, I don't know if they were trolling or what they were doing, but they did a pretty good job of at least getting, the folks like us that are already, down the rabbit holes and in this world, thinking again that everyone at the bus stop cares at this point. And, I consistently am refuting that in real life where no one's really asking questions. But I thought, we'd see massive ratings and it would take over. And, I had like a CNN in the background. I'm like, well, they haven't broken to who it is, the big reveal. And then, it's like I go through it for a couple hours and I'm like, okay, fine. They, they named Peter Todd essentially as their, I don't want to say suspect, but as their candidate, if you will. And I have a lot of mixed emotions about it because I feel as if it was kind of an opportunity to, help onboard and kind of normalize the development of, Bitcoin overall. And I felt like it just kind of went down routine roads of like, okay, we have to come out of this at the end of this with a payoff of some sort. So I feel like they almost, kind of use their own bias to create a solution to have it kind of have a bow at the end. And the parts of it that I thought were the most compelling and interesting were much more like, when they were going around with Samson Mo, and apologize if I botched the name, but like when they were like evangelical about it to, like the El Salvadorian president and to the Serbian, the Serbian prince, and kind of advocating for how it really can be a solution. I wish that the thrust of it had nothing to do really with this nothing burger of trying to identify who it was, and much more just like let's let everybody see what's happening with the adoption and development of Bitcoin across the world and all the problems that it can solve and everything like that. So it started off, having that kind of broader point. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. I would love to, kind of share this and get people involved, because they did a relatively good job of kind of hitting all the plot points from the genesis, all the way up to this point.
And would you say those were fairly positive?
I thought so.
They spun it in a historical, not setting it up for super negative. So how much of the show would you say was positive like that? Like half?
I'd say north of half, at least my take on it, because I was like, oh, well, that's cool. They're educating, now you understand, the different points where, where decisions were made on the course of it. And, it's always still so fascinating when to me at least, when they show, the historical prices, and it's like, oh, dude, it was like freaking 20 cents at one point. Like, this is absurd, so you do kind of have that sit back, and they did try to address the ETFs and all that stuff. But I think that the better program would have been about kind of the proliferation and the development of Bitcoin as its own kind of story, as opposed to trying to tie it to kind of a faux payoff, which is what happened. Like, it kind of went down that point, and I started losing interest because I felt as if, they were trying to force threads, and it was more almost that, that kind of confirmational bias kind of came into play a little bit, where it's like, I suspect it's him. We could kind of weave things together to make that case. So ultimately, we're not seeing any huge price impact. The way that it was being positioned, you thought that there'd be a significant reveal. And again, a nothing burger. It all goes back to, the Bitcoin doesn't care, that whole mantra and that whole theory. And it's like, we're not going to see a big impact of this. I don't think that it's going to get significant ratings outside of the folks that are already, been pilled and are into this space. Like, I don't think that, a lot of normal people are going to be like, let me check this out and stick with it. So I feel like it was a bit of a hype job to a degree, like, oh, it's going to be a big reveal. And we kind of fell for it. And, you look at who made it, right? You look at, Warner Brothers. And what was really weird was when it started, there was like a little promo for CNN right before it. And I'm like, oh shit, they own CNN and it's all tied together. And then that made me, it just got me going mainstream media in the back of my mind. Like, okay, we're going to plug CNN, then go right into this, who's the founder of Bitcoin piece and all that.
What's the angle? And when I looked at the story this morning after I got home super late last night, CNN was the first thing that came up. So it sounds like you're saying they have the perfect baton pass. It's interesting. It sounds to me almost like, how there's really good comedies and all of a sudden like they're like, oh shit, we like haven't furthered the plot at all. So there's always like that 28 minutes, like an hour in, where they finally run out of like the opening gags and they haven't furthered the plot enough to get to some sort of ending. So they just try and get to that so they can do more gags. And you're always like, oh, that was so good. And then it got really clunky, but it sounds like this was the same thing. Like, it was setting up Bitcoin. It sounds like you're saying the high road would have been like, look, we're giving you the history of Bitcoin. It's fascinating. Here are the people it could be. Maybe it could be this person. You're saying even if they had identified this Peter Todd guy, who by the way would have been like a pretty inexperienced, like I think 21, 22-year-old coder at the time. I know a lot of people are saying his first Bitcoin from the spigot was like 2010, like mid to later 2010. But the smoking gun, from what I understand, is that they think there was something that was written because a lot of people think it was either like a European or Canadian, because like favor, we say FAVOR and they say favor FAVOUR. And that's just an example of like that kind of OU wording that Americans don't use, because we're all about like, our words are always generally shorter and simpler, like dog, torch.
More abrupt.
They're more abrupt, but it sounds like they could have made this a nice broader swing to like, here are the people it could be. There was actually a documentary back in literally 2014 of the early days. And they did say, they're like, here were the original cypherpunks. Here's the 8 guys that it could have been. But I guess the smoking gun though was that they think he continued a Satoshi post. It did have kind of these OU or some sort of an identifier, and it had literal asterisks around words, which I guess Satoshi used italics a lot. And when you want to short code something, asterisks actually are supposed to create italics. And they also said because he didn't defend it and he said like, yeah, I'm Satoshi, which we all know is the biggest joke ever. It's like, we're all Satoshi except for Craig Wright. No, Craig Wright is not Satoshi. It's been proven in court, but the rest of us are, right? So we are all Satoshi, Disco.
Yeah, and I think you're 100% right. It felt like, it got to the point you were talking about, like those kind of 90s comedies, which they don't make anymore because they're not tied to any IP. So they've been completely ungreenlit. So you won't be able to see those. But yeah, they get rolling for about 28 minutes. And then it's like, oh shit, we have to insert love interest by now. Oh, we have to insert protagonist to fit that. And they just totally unravel. And you're like, what happened there? Yeah. So it had shades of that. But again, for me, I just felt a little bit let down because I did fall a little bit for the hype of my own, timeline and echo chamber, thinking that it was going to be a more monumental deal than it was. And again, and kudos to, not kudos, but respect to everybody who has to go through, significant real life challenges right now, on the news cycle that we're looking at. We're looking at, last week we did the show and it was, there was a lot of stuff that was developing in the Middle East, which is, we want to have a ton of empathy and sympathy for folks living that. We feel the same way for everybody, in the line of this next hurricane that's coming in, which kind of makes you put a lot of things into perspective. So, I hope everyone does well out of that. And I didn't see, this reveal breaking into the news cycle as I thought it might have. I was like, oh, they're going to be covering it. It's going to be huge. And, it's in our world, I guess.
Yeah, when we do the show, obviously, when one of the biggest hurricanes in a long time is imminently going to hit, later today, later tonight, and then and everything going on overseas, like it's tough to take some of this crap seriously. But in the decentralized crypto space we are, and we go macro, we go micro. But that's a really good point, Disco, and send and love to all the families who are caught up in any of these struggles, both in our own country and abroad. So the winner, obviously, Peter Todd was not even listed on Polymarket. So it was other multiple that had actually won. But to me, I know Jack Mahler's had an impassioned interview yesterday. I don't know if you saw it, but I watched the 4-minute clip where he was just like, leave everybody. Because I think it leaked yesterday that it was going to be this Peter Todd guy. And he's just like, leave everybody alone. It doesn't matter. It's decentralized. The ship has sailed. In the pre-show, I was talking to you, like, is there some setup of some play by kind of mainstream media and the government to like set Bitcoin up, find a founder, and then maybe like try and sue this guy back to the Stone Ages and like make it feel more centralized because of that? But it sounds like you're saying it was so poorly done in the second half when they were in the whodunit phase that it turned into a nothing burger, and your family all after the first 45 minutes or hour were like, yeah, we're good. I'm going to go back to Minecraft or go back to, Fortnite or whatever. No, thanks. This is boring.
Yeah, I have a room off of the kitchen, and one of my main points of interaction with them is I see the snack door open multiple times every hour or whatever. And I'm like, hey, who's there? What are you doing? And they're like, I'm like, hey, this is the Satoshi reveal. I'm like, it's the Satoshi reveal. And they're like, I'm like, Stella, or, you know this, you know who it is. And she's like, I'm like, tell mom who Satoshi is. She's like, it's the guy you talk about a lot. I don't know. And I was like, okay, I guess that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you said, just sending love to all those folks and hopefully, he's basically said like, I've been in this news cycle before. Hopefully this one's no worse, but I guess the hurricane is kind of this metaphor for like when the media lens is focused on you, like, that's probably a whole show right there on decentralization. Like, how do you remain like safe, I guess, just to, have a close knit group of family, friends, and loved ones, and unplug and take your rubber soled shoes off and literally stand in the grass and ground to Mother Earth. So that's my
And
hippie advice for the week.
and there's a part of me that feels, that, Peter Todd invited them into this. He accepted the interviews and he accepted the camera crews, and
Fair.
to me it felt like he was kind of playing a little bit. And it's kind of fun, I guess. It would be kind of fun to be like, dude, these guys are all on this, like, let me kind of play with this for a little bit. Because when the filmmaker directly tried to confront him at the end, I could almost see in his face, like, dude, should I mess with this? Or, where do I go with this? It was almost like, dude, you're offered like this opportunity to kind of run with it and,
Right.
and do what you did. So take it for what it is. I mean, I guess it's definitely worth watching, but I don't think that, as we can see, I don't think it really moved that many mountains.
So when he quote unquote admitting it, you're saying it was so
Well,
obviously tongue in cheek.
He was like, I'm
Yeah.
Satoshi and I'm Craig Wright. It's like, okay, so you got your little, like, they got the soundbite stuff out of it. And so it didn't feel all that, like it was all that powerful. I do want to say, because we did it, we mentioned it during the last program and we haven't for a while, but if you're watching, you can, click into the actual box and make comments and be a part of the show. So if anyone has any feedback or their takes on, on this or any of the topics we get into, please feel free, because it's fun when we're able to interact with the audience. And we got a lot of great questions last week when we were doing the Rare Sat show with Quarry, and that was really enlightening, at least for me. I learned a ton and really appreciated it. So
Yeah.
please feel free to interact.
That was a great show. And yeah, in Disco, when you told people to interact, I don't think people fully know in video spaces, and also know in video spaces, you can hit that little inside out box where it can minimize on your iPhone, and then you can keep scrolling Twitter, because nobody wants to be trapped in the same thing. But yeah, ask us questions if we can, and it's somewhat on topic, we'll answer anything. And we love the feedback. And look how cool the PFPs look. Like, we got it all big and fat. Like, it just looks awesome. So Does Not, thumbs up to you. Thank you for watching. Big fan of yours and everything that you've done in the RSIC world. Yeah, so good point, Disco. So, okay, cool. Let's move on to, so it sounds like net, we are all Satosh, and Peter Todd reveal on HBO special, nothing burger, maybe with a side of mayo.
Something to drink.
Something to drink. A reference nobody will ever get unless they grew up where we grew up. All right, so this is interesting. Disco, why don't you take us down the road of we don't do politics much, but this is actually interesting. With everything ties to Polymarket now.
Yeah, it is interesting, kind of the mind share that Polymarket has gotten, and kind of the validity and its space within kind of the question and the conversation overall of, what are these polls really a reflection of, and what are the metrics behind it, and all that sort of stuff. And it's really interesting in the last week or so, looking into Polymarket versus, the broader, more mainstream polls. You have really seen a big separation with Trump and Harris. I want to say it's been like, 7 points over the past 7 days or so. And it was way more neck and neck before that. So it's really interesting to see this happen, and to see, the conversation around it, which I think is probably the most interesting part of it. A lot of people will say, well, Polymarket's probably a better indicator of, what's really happening, because people have the conviction to actually place their money behind, what they're saying. So does that make it more valid than the other ones? But when it comes down to it, you're starting to now be able to kind of dig into this, and folks are doing a good job of pulling this out. Is like, are single individuals or are groups able to really impact and kind of tweak the perception of these results? And is that a new way, is that a new thing that people can start manipulating and playing with? So it's been really interesting to take a look at, and to see that a lot of the national polls are talking about more like a neck and neck still, but we're starting to see this Trump pull away, and it's just interesting to see if that is if that's a precursor to what we're going to see in less than 30 days, or
Right.
if it's something where someone's kind of moving the levers behind the scenes a little bit.
Yeah, it's so hard to know because, like, just look at the numbers for the last, since what, September 15th. I think I got 1 month on here. So obviously Kamala wasn't even running until Biden stepped down. So what was that, like late August, early September? It's amazing that it wasn't even that long ago. But, Trump obviously had a huge lead even on Biden. He was killing him. He was crushing him, I should say. And then Kamala, since early September all the way until about October 3rd, 4th, went up and was in the lead. And then Trump has gone up sizably now. So I don't know, Disco. I might see it a hair different. I almost feel like, can I trust Polymarket? Is this because think about it. Psychologically, if you have a ton of money, you could theoretically use this as part of your influence. Like, let's say you've got I don't know what presidents get these days, $1 billion war chest or hundreds of millions, or whatever they get to advertise. Right. It wouldn't take much. Well, God, there's 1.5 billion now in this election alone. Is that really 1.5 billion is put into this election? That is, I mean, does FanDuel get that for Bears Lions games? Like 1.5 billion on this election outcome. I think psychologically, so many more people, Nate Silver's obviously like the guy that most people pay attention to. He seems to be the one that gets, maybe not always right, but seems like he's always got the best, the lowest variance in outcome from what his prediction is. But Polymarket's brand new. A lot of people are looking at it inside, and I suspect more and more outside of crypto. This could make a big impact. So I feel like now, because it swung so quickly in the last week, look at this. Like, it was neck and neck 5 days ago, and then the swing just happened on the 7th. I don't know if Kamala, I don't know what she did on like Sunday, but it just gap widened. To me, that just says big money on that side could have just put in like $50 million or $100 million to sway that and really pump the red over the blue, which kind of makes you question like your data,
Yeah, and that, I think that's the bigger point, right? And that's what we're going into with everything is what's the numbers behind it, and how are those numbers, how do you get to those numbers? And you look at maybe a stand with crypto, or not some of those different packs that we have. Right. It's like, well, that could be a way to shorten the distance and perception of where things are at, and to get people to have a different sort of set of indicators in terms of where things are headed. So I think about this a lot sometimes. It's like the Trump team was very well strategized to be able to take on Biden. So like, did the Democrats know that was going on? And did they have this kind of plan to kind of flip the gears at the end, because they knew they would be he had so many things ready to go against Biden. He could just see he had everything ready. And then once it flipped, it was like, wait, what? Like, what are we going to do now? And it's just, so I just question all of this now and really take a look at it and see, there's that one account on the Freddy 999 Polymarket that has like, let's take a look at this.
Here you go. So here's Freddy 999. So this is Freddy 999. This individual on Polymarket has 8.5 million bet, certainly more than I could ever bet on anything. Their volume traded now is at about $60 million. But if you look at all the bets they place, like I said, 8.5 million currently in active bets. Will Donald Trump win the presidential election? Yes. Will a Republican win the presidential election in Pennsylvania? Yes. Will a Democrat win in Pennsylvania? No. So basically you see the pattern here. There's at least, I don't know, what you say? There's probably 25 bets that they're making. Every single one is for a Republican to win, a Democrat to lose. Now, 8.5 million to 1.5 billion isn't that's not going to move the needle like we just saw on that last chart. But with some of these smaller ones, like, will Donald Trump win 2024 U.S. presidential election? He has 5.7 million there on a 282 million total. That could swing it like a percentage or two. 700 grand in one that only has 1.3 million. Will the Republican win Pennsylvania? So that can swing it. Let's look at that one. So he's saying yes, the Republican will win Pennsylvania, and I assume, yeah, they're predicted to win 55 to 45%, and a majority of that money. There's only 12 million in. What did I just say? He had seven. Freddie had
Yeah.
7 in this one. So that basically, unless a Democrat or a Democratic super PAC anchors that, that could sway this big time. So, like we talk about this with meme coins, we talk about this with pumps of ordinals projects and NFTs and all that. Like, it's just because you said something yesterday in our long off channel chats, but you're like, we say this all the time. You can't, once you see something, like, unfortunately, you can't unsee it, unless Men in Black, the Men in Black come by with their little pen that erases your memory. But it's you can't unsee this, and now you're like, what? It makes you question a lot, and it just makes it harder to get your news.
Yeah, and I'd like to say it's positive in terms of you being kind of not enlightened, but turned on to looking at these things. And then it does make it more difficult when you're interfacing with, other people in your life that aren't, looking at things the same,
Right.
through those same lenses. And it's kind of hard to relate a lot of times. So it's one of the reasons I enjoy doing the show, and I enjoy, interacting with the folks that are in this space, because I think that that's one of the, kind of aligning themes that we have, is to kind of question things and to look at it and to kind of really, verify, right? Or, try to figure this stuff out. So manipulation in any form it's interesting, but it is also fascinating to see Polymarket get mainstreamed in terms of being brought up in a lot of different news sources.
It's brought up by us all the time. So interesting story and an interesting take. And who's Freddie 999? We assume, if they're going to bet across the board as a Republican, we assume it's a Republican and someone who's having the Republican Party. There's speculation on who it could be, but we're not going to go there. But it's just interesting that you could even have a super PAC get involved here. Like, if I was, you and I have been in the advertising space before, we're knowledgeable of it. If we had $1 billion budget to run one of these campaigns, we'd be like, especially on these smaller ones where you're like, we are absolutely putting $6 million here to raise that. Like, why wouldn't we? I mean, so if that seems like a game theory strategy that would work, then it probably is one. These guys who wins elections for people, like, they're not stupid.
Yeah, that's less than like one ad in Blue Bloods or something.
Yeah, or Parks and Recs when when Jam's running or something. All right, cool. So moving forward, let's go to. So this is a little update from a past story, but what happened, Disco?
Well, basically, we had a great show in this, and I love the image, so that was part of the reason I wanted to make sure we talked about it. But
how can we talk about X in Brazil again?
But X is it's coming back online in Brazil. So they did what they needed to do. I guess they had to agree to have like one legal representation or something like that in the country. But the bottom line is it's back up, or it's about to be back up. And, I think that that's a victory. I thought that it was, kind of atrocious to see, something like that just get shut down with the quickness that it did and with the, kind of finality with which it did. So it's nice to see that come up. I do probably want to follow up in the next week or so and see what happens to the Blue Sky numbers, because if you remember when that happened, they had like a big jump up to 10 million users in Brazil. And I just don't know if it's sticky enough that people are going to stay, or if everyone's just going to go back to X.
Yeah, probably a combo of both. It just depends how long X sticks. I guess the only other thing to say with X in Brazil, I mean, that's one of their bigger markets. Obviously, they're still reliant, obviously subscription's big, but they're still reliant on advertising. And, they, from the Supreme Court down in Brazil, I know that X did meet a lot of their demands. So a lot of people, are a little bummed about freedom of speech, but they're definitely in a rock and a hard place here. What all the concessions were, we don't fully know yet, but we know that there were definitely concessions made on X to stay in the country. And that's a tough one. That's a tough one, but X is back in Brazil. So all our Brazilian friends, Ravi and everybody out there, we I'm sure hopefully a lot of you are VPNing in anyway, but welcome
Yeah.
officially back, I guess.
Aha.
Yeah, so this is a good one. This one is really interesting. So, we talked about pumps and we talked about gaming the system and stuff like that. Actually, this image helps, but I want to start here because there was a great presentation by Murad at in Singapore for what was it called?
Token.
Token,
Token
thank you. I
20.
was say Token 2049, and it's a very compelling. It's like when you read Atlas Shrugged. It's a very compelling story at this individualism and how perfect it is, and then you go out in the real world. You're like, yeah, that's important, but the rest of the world has to work too. So there's probably a combo that works to make the world hum round. But Murad's points were basically like, you've been, and this I agree with. You've been duped by VCs. I don't know if he went back, but ever since ICOs, VCs have been doing these pumps that they can do quick exit liquidity. Retail is always the bag holder. Generally, there's always a promise of utility, which we talk about on this show a lot, Disco with NFTs, but there's this promise of utility of some sort. The early, billionaires and VCs and whales get in early. They can get out and dump on retail, and generally what Murad's saying, and I don't always I agree for most parts, is a lot of it's vaporware, or it certainly doesn't live up to the expectations that it's supposed to. So, create token around some utility and benefit for retail buys VC bags, rinse, repeat. And he's saying the meme coin solves all this. There is no utility. So it's funny, Disco, like,
Yeah.
you asked me the great question. You're like, we're talking about utility. We're talking about NFTs. Like, and we always say no utility is the best utility. And you're right. That's what, sorry to steal your thunder, but that's like, go on that one. That's what Murad's saying. He's like, utility is just a waste of time. Get straight to the point, for him.
Well, I think it's really about, kind of this potentially false promise of utility, right? It's this, invest in the capacity of what could be, and then you have this leap of faith that it's actually going to come to fruition. And as a result of that, I'm the billboard of this guy who was jumping in on all these promises of utility and altcoins, at the frothy peak of the last cycle. I was like, oh, but if this happens, then this will be everyone will do it this way in the future. Like, I'll never have to brew my own coffee. It'll all be from this NFT, and all these just ridiculously glorious, outcomes that really didn't have a roadmap. And we've gone through this kind of conversation, in different iterations in looking at, ordinals as opposed to NFTs, and it really coming down to, the basis of, hey, at least I know that if I purchase art as an ordinal, it will be on chain. And if that's what I'm doing this transaction for, because I'm passionate about the art, then how can I get burned down the road because I'm not falling for a false promise? And I feel like that's kind of Murad's take in a weird way on meme coins. It's like, dude, they do what they do, and there's no like, oh, but then this needs to come to life or whatever. He's saying like that it brings you the sense of community. It brings you, identification. It gives you an opportunity to come in early and to make money. So once you see some of these pop or whatever, that may be the ultimate representation of the fulfillment of utility. And I think that that's kind of where we're headed. And I think that it may be part of the death blow for altcoins. And I think he did a good job of kind of outlining that. It's like, how many more times am I going to be like, oh, well, they think that this L2, can do this with that, right, as opposed to, hey, this is doing what it's doing. And it's in, it's in real time. And this is what's happening. So there's something pure about how he positioned the promise of, getting involved in various meme coins.
Yeah, I definitely listened to this video. It's on his site, and it's his Twitter X handle. from September 27th. It is very compelling, Disco, and there's no utility. And he's basically saying, look, religion's down, organized everything is down. Now people are kind of, instead of religion, they're going more to spirituality. And he's saying a meme coin can have no utility. Look at who's pumping it. Pump your own bags, for goodness sake. Like, why wouldn't you? And, he's like, the more culty and the bigger, the better. And you know what? Elements of it are gross, but he's absolutely right there. And, especially with no guidance from the SEC, it's just like everyone's a criminal, but you're actually allowed to, like, with a stock, I'm pretty sure when you sell one, you have to wait 30 days to buy it. You're not allowed to just pump stocks and buy and sell unless you're in Congress. Sorry. That was a big caveat to that, which is ridiculous. But he's basically like, what are you doing? Like, pump your own bags. And I will say that I got caught up in this. Like, I do like runes, and there's obviously, we've been involved in RSIC. I'm a fan of Billy, and I'm a fan of different ones. But, when I saw Polymarket that, going into last weekend, Len Sassman was like 50% pick. I'm like, wow, that's a big number on Polymarket of who they're probably going to identify. So there was only one rune token of the, I don't know what we're up at now, a couple 100,000 probably, but there was one that was a Ghost of Len Sassman. And I saw another buddy pick some up. I'm like, I'll pick some up. It was, I didn't pay much for it. And then I posted on the timeline and, like, hey, I like these odds. Polymarket's got it at 50% right now. And over the weekend and going to Monday and yesterday, the odds changed drastically and stuff leaked. And then Sassman probably went to zero, but it brings up a bigger point. Like, I got involved in that. I'm like, I'm glad I didn't make like a bag and posting it, like, I know that sounds stupid because it's like, you're supposed to make a bag, but I'm glad I just like, and by Monday there was literally 50 Len Sassman coins, but it goes to the bigger point. Like, it just feels bad because, like you said in our earlier segment, like, these are people's lives, and he's passed away. He died from suicide, rest in peace. And but he still has a wife and family that is still behind, and we just send them all the love. So but that's not the whole Murad story. So Murad's points were well taken, and we were going to cover it just as it was, because it's almost so brash in what he said that it's refreshing, but it's all in a cringy way, in a way, but he's kind of calling the truths. Like, it's a cult, no utility. Get a group of people to pump these meme coins. The more, the better, and the stronger following, the better, because this is replacing religion. And you're like, yeah, those feel like hollow walls, but he's right.
Yeah. And it's also, almost a really bull sentiment for Solana, overall, because it's really, talking about, hey, this is how this stuff works. It's not going away. It's going to be a pivotal part of kind of this next cycle. And if you don't understand it, get out of the way, and it's what's going on over there. So to me, it brought, a little bit more validation and conviction in terms of, if this really is going to be fundamental to kind of this next wave. A lot of this activity, as we know at this point for sure, is taking place on Solana, which then makes me look at, how will, Bitcoin, how will Bitcoiners and or people who are involved in meme coins on Bitcoin or runes, how is that going to, kind of stand up against kind of just this Solana surge, where it's just this environment that seems to be very conducive to the growth that we're seeing on that side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the highest, I know Billy's making a big run, but it's still in at 72 million. We got Dog of the Moon at almost 400 million, whereas the top, Solana coins are in the, I don't know if they're still at 2 billion, but they're up there, right? So there's a couple over $1 billion. They've fallen from their all-time highs, but they're going up every day. And the Hippo one, and like it's just way more quick and fast and crack like and liquid there. But we've talked about that a lot. But with on the Bitcoin side, like it's gonna take some probably refinements to and faster transactions and gossip, light pool technology to probably raise the profile. Now, I don't know if it compete with Solana 1-to-1, but that's where I'm spending my time. But I think a lot of new people who want lower transaction fees are going to be at Solana. So obviously we recognize that too.
Yep.
But the other side of this story is, unless you have something to say before, Disco, because this is kind of I don't want to say this is a shoe dropping, but just recently, early this morning, Zach XB2, who's just been on fire lately, just like 16 million or something from a woman who got totally scammed. He got that money back. Obviously 250 million last week with those guys, got them their footage from their computer. Like, this guy is a pro, and hats off to you, Zach. We applaud you on this show. Like, thank you for doing this work, again, like putting yourself in the spotlight and maybe going after bigger actors and folks with a lot of money. Like, that can be scary, I'm sure. And so thank you for trying to speak the truth. But he uncovered what is most allegedly likely Murad's wallets. So anybody who's certainly following Murad, and someone asked too, like, if we're going to do that, let's get Ansem too, like the two biggies, especially on the Sol side. But he has all their wallets. So just take a look. And if you want to know what he owns, I believe, I don't follow Murad myself, but he's pumping SBX, Giga, Retardio, Popcat, Mini, and he's got 24 million at least in this one wallet, and he found, I believe, 11 wallets. So the guy's got money, but good for Zach. And someone's like, how dare you call out his privacy? And someone else is like, public information, dude. And someone who has 200,000 followers, like, I absolutely want to know that guy's wallet. Like, if I can figure it out, like, yeah, I want to see if this guy's a total grifter or not. But, I don't think it will be a surprise either way. The guy told us his strategy is like, pump your own coins, make it a cult. And like, he gave the roadmap, and it was so succinct. I think that's what was so shocking and eye-opening.
Yeah, no, this is incredible, because you saw that's made the rounds after, the Singapore event. So, you kind of, that narrative took off, and it made, as we already said, it made everybody kind of think and consider what's happening. So that was fascinating. But then I give Zach so much kudos for being able to then connect dots and put that out there. And I just think, I want to take a look more at what he got involved with, because it'll be interesting to see the performance and things like that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So moving on, and to close, FTX and their awesome, the people who handled the bankruptcy and the lawyers, we have the numbers, and it's interesting, Disco. So we do have a repayment, and I'll start with the good news first. They are going to get, I believe it's 108 or 118%.
It's 118%.
118%. So all the depositors are going to get 118% of their initial deposits. And that sounds fantastic, right? But Disco,
that's remarkable. No, that's great. And they're gonna pay out north of 16 billion, to make sure that people are taken care of and things are made right. And I don't know, the legal fees. We'll take a side note on that at some point. But yeah, on paper that sounds pretty awesome. And I went through something similar with a lockup on Gemini. So you really got to take a look at what it means. But the bottom line is, they're paying people back in cash at the value of the time that it all got locked up, which was like it was November of 22. So the real truth is, if you had one Bitcoin and, right now it'd be worth what, 62 ish, right? You're going to get paid $16,000 in cash. So not even
that was the value on that day. So you get the cash value of the Bitcoin. So that does two things, right? Not only do you not get your Bitcoin, but it also triggers an automatic tax event that was not even your choice. And, I'm all for paying your taxes, but that's like fully recorded in the court of law. Like, it's just, it's such a lose-lose on so many fronts. Interesting, Disco. I was like, why won't you? Because with you had a happy ending, no pun intended, with Gemini or whoever it was. You got your crypto.
We got them. I got it in kind. Like they basically unfroze the account, and it was the balance in the denominations that I held once it was locked up. So if I had 2 Bitcoin when they unlocked it, I had 2 Bitcoin, and it was basically a forced hodl, which would have been very beneficial because you went from 16-ish up to 64. So it almost enforced some discipline in a backhanded way. So yeah, that's a happy story. But again, this is just, it's miserable, to be penalized. I think probably the tax part could be, almost as, if not, as important and as much of a ding. Like that part is really underreported. And I think it's really remarkably terrible.
Yeah, but getting the cash is worse. I mean, a $16,000 Bitcoin, like you got the cash at that time. Oh no, I'm sorry. The reason
at like the lowest.
No, but the reason, 16 was that local low in 22. But the where the 118 comes from? It's making you whole. So for you, like you said, 1 Bitcoin, you get your 16 grand plus the 18%. That's 9% interest each year. It's like, yay, 9%. And 9% obviously in a normal cash like bankruptcy deal would be great. You'd be like, I'll take 18% over 2 years. That's more than fair. But when it's Bitcoin that went from 16 to 64, it's not fair. But I looked a little deeper, Disco, into why, like, was it even an option for the judge to consider if they could have done it in kind and giving the actual Bitcoin and ETH and other cryptocurrencies? And the sad reality is that, do you know what percent in the FTX treasury, and who knows what these legal teams, restructuring teams came in and took out or whatever, but guess what percentage of the depositors' Bitcoin was in the treasury in FTX when it closed?
0.1%
0.1% Bitcoin was in the FTX treasury when they declared bankruptcy. 0.1%. So all those depositors, if there was 700,000 Bitcoin, 0.1% were in there. 0.1. And ETH was way higher at 1.2%. So I'm going to date myself here, but there was a terrible show called Geraldo Rivera back in the 80s or 90s, and he went to Al Capone's vault. They promoted this for like 5 months, and I can't believe they did this on live TV. And they went into the vault, and it was like, it's empty. There was nothing. It was like cobwebs. Like what morons. So that's the story on FTX. It's gross, but are we surprised?
No, we're not surprised at all. I mean, I don't even know. I don't have a bow to wrap that with. It's just like you just feel bad, and whatever. No
bow. So, well, I don't know. It's been a very efficient show this week, Disco. Yeah. It's been a very enjoyable one. Are we? Do we have any other? Oh yeah, Scribe. We wanted to just give a little shout out and a mention. Go ahead.
No, it's starting to seep out a little bit that there's been some developments on the Coinbase side that could lead to some interesting developments in news tying to runes and ordinals. So we want to shout out Scribe for pointing some of this out.
Yeah, so Scribe basically points out that Coinbase is now allowing Bitcoin withdrawals to Taproot addresses, which Taproot and SegWit were the 2 biggest upgrades to Bitcoin in the last, 2, 3, 4 years. And his theory is that completely sets the table for inscription and possibly even rune support. So whether it's just a security thing and they're finally getting around to it, possible, but Scribe is inclined to think that it's far more and that we could be seeing ordinals and runes there. And, seeing runes we know aren't as big as meme coins on Solana, but in Bitcoin they could be. So why wouldn't they get in the game if they saw profitability? So it's an interesting take. Scribe, thank you for being you. But with that said,
Yeah.
Disco, you wanna take us out?
Yeah. As always, this show is for entertainment purposes only. Please don't construe any of the content as financial advice. Be careful, protect yourself, and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and have a great week. We got a great show with Zagabond on Friday, so stay
Ooh.
tuned for that.